Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Masmira and I am really excited for this fourth episode of Unpacking IVCO 2023 blog post. Today we are going to have a special chat to discuss two IVCO 2023 blog post topics this week and make it accessible for everyone, especially those who do not have the time to read at all. We have three special guests today, which is Shaida Salwi, who wrote Leaders of Tomorrow Are Today's Changemakers, together with Kelsey McMahon and Vanessa Dickey, who wrote How Multiple Service Models Empower Youth Development in a Dynamic World. We are going to break both of the blog posts down in this interview. So let's start. Let's all say a big hello to all three of our blog post authors who are here with us today. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so
Hello.
maybe would you like to introduce yourself? We can start with Shaida.
Okay,
Please go
hi.
ahead.
Assalamualaikum. A very good evening from Malaysia. Like our sweet moderator just now, Masmira introduced, I'm Shaida. Thank you so much for having me today, and I look forward for today's sharing session. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Shaida. Maybe next we can have from Kelsey.
Hi, it's morning here outside Philadelphia on the East Coast. And again, my name is Kelsey. I'm super excited to talk to you today about Peace Corps along with my colleague. Thank you again for having us.
All right, and lastly, let us have Vanessa. Please say hi to the audience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I'm also calling in from a very early morning at 6 a.m. here in Arizona, which is out west in the United States. Thrilled to be here today. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for the authors. Despite of the change of different timing, we all could come together here to break down the blog post that you put. So let's just jump right into the first question with Ms. Shaida. The piece highlights the tech savviness of new generation of volunteers. Can you explain how this technology proficiency is transforming volunteerism and enabling volunteers to address complex challenges more effectively?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Okay, as we all know, we are currently living in a digital era, right, where information is easily accessible. So anyone can access information on the internet with just the tips of your finger, through the side of your gadgets. So especially youth volunteers, they can research and gather data on the challenges that they are addressing, which enables to make more informed decisions and also develop well-rounded and solid solutions to the thing that they're addressing. So that's one thing. So with the development of technology, there are also an abundance of digital tools and platforms. So with this abundance, we also have platforms that are specifically designed for volunteer management, project organization, also fundraising. And I personally use for my personal stuff, Trello. So I find that these tools actually help, I feel, volunteers manage their tasks, track progress, and also reach a wider audience. Especially crowdfunding platforms, and also maybe petition websites such as change.org actually enables volunteers to reach out more to audience. And like I mentioned just now, crowdfunding platforms enable volunteers to secure financial support from people who actually care about the issue. So volunteers can actually upskill themselves through online learning resources. So whether it's learning about disaster response techniques, improving their teaching skills, or even gaining more knowledge on environmental conservation, online courses are actually offered in such, there are a lot of it out there, and most of them you can access for free. So I feel like technological advancement actually help volunteers to contribute more to our society. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Aida. Yes, it is true that nowadays all these gadgets and technologies help us a lot with, especially crowdfunding, because we definitely need some aid in volunteerism. And also I would like to ask Kelsey, the blog post mentioned that the Peace Corps has evolved to offer 3 service models. Could you briefly explain how these 3 different models, including long-term on-site service, short-term on-site service, and short-term virtual service, contribute to youth development and community empowerment in unique ways?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, for context, Peace Corps actually has 6 programmatic sectors, and they're agriculture, environment, education, health, community, economic development, and then as well as youth and development. But with that said, the agency recently did an analysis, and they discovered that 80% of all of our projects actually involve youth in some capacity. So I think that data really reflects that not only is youth a priority for the partners, but also it's a strength of the Peace Corps. So getting back to your 3 different service models support these different sectors. If you take a look at the agency's first service model, which is the 2-year on-the-site service, its long-term nature really gives the community, including the youth, an opportunity to really build a strong relationship with that American, because they're working side by side and living with one another for such an extended period of time. I'm really proud to say that I was a 2-year volunteer, and I got to serve as technically an education volunteer in South Africa. I was facilitating, English classes and social studies for grade 6. But my presence in the post-apartheid community really made a difference on youth outside of the classroom that I didn't really expect, which was great. Obviously their English skills improved, but also they grew less timid around someone who was very different from themselves. And that long period of time in service, I'm really grateful for, because it gave me a better understanding of that culture, and my Zulu language skills got significantly better. So it's a 2-way street between volunteers and the community. I'll give you one other example of the 2-year. In Ecuador, we have a 2-year volunteer and their counterpart. They teamed up with a local university to build awareness in secondary students on potential career opportunities, as well as the valuable skills that would make them competitive for the workforce. I love that, because I think really youth everywhere could benefit from just that awareness of what other jobs are out there outside of the traditional teacher, doctor, and then identifying those skills to get to make their dreams a reality gives them like achievable stepping stones. So I love that example. And then, there's the response on-site in-person service. And that's, while it's in person, it's a much shorter period of time that they serve. So really, due to the specialized nature of those projects, the response volunteers are experienced professionals with technical skills that the community has requested to support their projects. And you'll see them supporting youth at, universities, nursing schools, nonprofits, and even grassroots organizations. So we have one response volunteer in Guinea that they, along with their counterparts, they did trainings for 40 young entrepreneurs, basic business skills to how to leverage social media to promote their business, which is awesome, because starting and managing a business is scary for anyone. And then finally, we have the agency's third and newest service model, which is virtual service. And I'm proud to say that I was a virtual service participant too. Response is the only one I haven't done, so that's next on my list. So when I participated for my virtual engagement, I was working with the organization that offers online courses, and the profits that they were getting from the cost of each course were then used to feed the orphans in the community. So really amazing organization. And my role was really just to apply my years of marketing on various teams and website user experience skills to offer suggestions to my counterpart on how to streamline the website to make it easier for the youth, but also adults looking for a career change, to find the course that they want and acquire those professional skills. And I'll give you one more example. Sorry, I love
It's okay.
our story, Ukrainian counterparts. So, obviously with the ongoing war, Ukraine can't host in-person volunteers. So they're really leaning into virtual service. And we have one participant who's a registered board certified art therapist and counselor, and they are currently supporting the displaced youth with special active conflict areas, all in the safety of his home, which is pretty amazing. And I love joining their closing ceremonies when the engagements wrap up, because the counterparts are always like close to tears, saying like how the time online really gave them a much needed distraction from the war. So while all three service models support youth and projects in very different ways, they're really focused on building capacity so that when the in-person volunteer or virtual participant, wrap up, return home, or conclude their engagement, the community is really set up for success to continue their project. So long answer, but yeah, it's amazing what the three different service models do.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, for the amazing insight about how Peace Corps actually deliver on three different types of volunteerism for youth, especially. It's actually very beautiful that we can contribute to a community and help them grow in a beautiful environment, because I wasn't definitely understand what you're saying. We get to go to Laos, we get to change people. Definitely it's not much, but we could do something that was quite impactful. So thank you so much for your insight. Maybe we can go to Vanessa. So Vanessa, virtual service is highlighted as a relatively new initiative. How has this model, which allows return Peace Corps volunteers to engage in part-time virtual service, been effective in empowering communities and youth, especially considering its emphasis on mentoring and capacity strengthening relationships?
Yeah, thank you for this question. In 2020, in the height of the pandemic, we were really this possible in a virtual space to maintain the Peace Corps approach to development. And the Peace Corps approach to development is really at its core about people and capacity building. So we thought, how would that translate to this virtual space? The virtual space is sort of like a third culture, right? It's not the United States. It's not the culture of Albania or Costa Rica. It's a shared space that is where two equal people show up, not only from their culture, but it's for the rest of the community around them. You're the collaboration between the counterpart and the products they develop together. Let's say they're developing a website like Kelsey did in her engagement, or maybe they're co-creating a curriculum for a classroom. That is a very active collaboration in that virtual space. But what happens is that product is then used or presented to the community, and the face of it is the counterpart. With our in-person model, it's a foreigner is sitting very conspicuously. Everyone in that place. And so sometimes what happens is they are seen as the local expert. So the community is thinking, oh, this person came from another country, they must know more. And sometimes it distracts from our counterpart. The counterpart meets the US volunteer, and the counterpart shares the cultural context and the technical context and their expertise. And the US American volunteer shares their perspective and maybe a connection to new resources. And that's where the magic happens, the engagement. So in some cases, maybe students or other people in the community are never going to see or interact with the US American example, where that individual is actually doing art therapy with students in Ukraine. But even in that scenario, our participants their role is really as a catalyst, someone who asks questions, facilitates resources. And so we were really intentional in building virtual service that it wouldn't become like a consultant model. We could certainly have on behalf of the organization. We said, no, we don't want to do that. We want it to be a collaboration and the virtual service pilot participant. Hey, Kelsey, tell them the story about the virtual service pilot participant who collaborated with the Albanian Youth Center.
Yeah, definitely. Well, can you tell I live for these stories. One participant worked in Albania with their counterpart to really talk about with high school and university students. So together they co-facilitate discussions on like what they were seeing locally, as opposed to, community littering, and then what achievable things they could do to help stop that and prevent the littering. And I think it's really easy, especially today, to get defeated when it comes to climate change and the environment. So I love that this virtual engagement really empowered the youth to identify very actionable items that they could do in their own community, because small steps, certainly add up. And I'll just do one more story because I love them. But there was one really small school in Montenegro that they worked with a VSPP. It was their first time partnering with Peace Corps, which is really special. And through, just conversational club dialogue, they were asking questions that mimicked real life conversations. The students really got to strengthen their listening and speaking skills. And then the students kept saying, when are we having this club? When are we doing it again? And the teachers and the principal were like, fine, we'll request an on-the-ground volunteer. So they did. And, today we have an on-the-ground volunteer, and they have expressed that, the startup was much easier. Their community was really excited, and the kids weren't shy to practice English. And I think back on my experience, and it took me months to get the kids comfortable with me. So it's that I love that story too. So thanks for letting me share that.
No worries. It's definitely, it's an eye-opening for people who don't really understand about volunteerism, that how we get to meet these people and make a difference in their lives, especially like engaging with them, building beautiful bond with them. It brings me back the memories that I had with my community. So maybe we can go back to Shaida. A question about your blog post that mentions that young volunteer embrace multi-facet approaches to tackling issues. Could you provide a specific example that illustrates how this innovative and holistic approach is being applied to create meaningful change in a particular area?
I think I'd like to illustrate a few examples regarding your question. So with the technological advancement, right, we can actually use that to our advantage. So I'd like to highlight, in rural areas, think about how we can deliver the healthcare facilities and things to the people who live in that area. So in some parts of countries, some youth volunteers actually collaborated with drone experts to design medical supply delivery systems, so that the people in the rural areas don't have to travel so far to the healthcare facilities to get their medication or treatments. So I think that's really, really interesting. So that's for healthcare, the healthcare side of things. If you look at the education landscape, I think in Malaysia itself is transforming in this area. Some youth volunteers, right, who are interested in education, they would collaborate with VR or virtual reality experts to create this immersive educational experiences. And we have also researchers and scholars, they are doing research on this, and they are seeing whether it actually benefits the students and does it give any positive impacts to the students' learnings. So these VR virtual reality lessons actually offer engaging ways to learn complex subjects and concepts such as biology. It requires you to see like the inside, for example, the human anatomy. You cannot really dissect a human unless you are
Yes.
taking, having this VR concept is actually really, I think, really helps students to learn better. So that's healthcare and also education. I'd like to give one more example.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, our generation are, we are interested in the mental healthcare aspect. We have that, it's quite popular these days because we would like to address this issue. We don't want this to prolong. So youth volunteers are actually breaking taboos, I believe, around mental health issues. They are working with artists and also mental health professionals in organizing art therapy, like as mentioned by Vanessa just now, some volunteers working to do with art therapy. So they are organizing art therapy workshops for people struggling with mental health issues. So I feel like this creative approach provides an outlet for expression and further aids for those people during their healing process. Yeah.
It is definitely a wonderful experience because I have experienced art therapy before, and it helps us to give us different ideas, even for myself. If art therapies are actually available for everyone and anyone, so I think it is amazing. Let us go to the next question. Uh, Either one, Kelsey or Vanessa. The question is to you both. The think piece suggests that organizations like the Peace Corps need to adapt to changing needs. Can you discuss the possibility of future service models and initiatives and how the Peace Corps plans to continue its unwavering commitment to youth development and community engagement through innovative approaches?
Yeah, I'll take that one. The world is a dynamic place. We started in 1961. Peace Corps was the brainchild of our president at the time, President Kennedy. And I'm thinking about what the world was like then and what has changed since then. I imagine Kennedy could not ever imagine a world where we have the technology we have today, and the advances we've made in poverty reduction and in healthcare. And there's been a lot of positive change since 1961, but there's also new challenges or challenges that have been exacerbated over time, like climate change. There's still global health threats that remain, and there's growing inequities. And these challenges are really being inherited by the youth. In 31 of the countries where Peace Corps has volunteer operations, the median age is 25 years or younger. So youth are really at the heart of solving these skills. And Peace Corps believes that youth with leadership skills and a true sense of agency can tackle these challenges. So our goal is really to support the youth in their own communities. And we'll continue to do that through those three models that Kelsey described, the 2-year on-site, the short-term on-site, and then the short-term part-time virtual models of service. But at the same time, we're starting to explore and will soon be piloting side-by-side service. So a US citizen volunteer gets trained with a local volunteer using the same curriculum that we have perfected over decades for intercultural competence and technical skills. They'll be trained together, and then they'll be placed in the same community together to work on a project together. And because they are, many of our on-site volunteers are young, and a young volunteer from the local community, they'll build skills together and build sustainable development together with that community through that side-by-side service. Another model that will soon be piloting, that we have dabbled in a little bit over the years, is supporting local volunteerism. So working with organizations that are developing their own version of a volunteer agency in their community, in their country, where they send volunteers out to various communities. So helping them develop training, helping them develop systems for supporting volunteers, and collaborating with them, sharing the experience of Peace Corps that we've honed over decades. And I think the important thing is that we just continue to listen to youth. We continue to listen to organizations that are working in this space. We know these ideas aren't new. Side-by-side service is being done by other organizations. There's other organizations that have been supporting local volunteerism. And so we really want to learn from the other organizations and from these youth organizations that are homegrown. You know, a lot of the youth organizations in the communities where we live, wow, inspiring, incredible, such dedication, such commitment to their own communities. So that's why we have such a big presence at IVCO. We're really here to learn. We really want to attend these sessions, listen to what else is going on in the volunteer space, especially around youth, and continue to perfect and improve the way that we support youth.
Definitely. So side-by-side services and volunteering services, it sounds very familiar because in YSS, yes, as Kuala Lumpur, as an alumni, we actually work with our counterpart, which is a local volunteer from their particular country. So we work side by side to conduct projects and any kind of services that help the local community to understand more about health. We have different sectors like health, about transformation of the logistics and education. So it is really interesting that if Peace Corps will do this, maybe in future Peace Corps can collaborate with YSS as well. You know, maybe we can have side-by-side volunteers
That sounds
to work together on projects.
Yeah, that sounds great, and it sounds like we have a lot to learn from you. So we look forward to learning.
Yes, definitely. So we will go to the last question, which is with Shaida. Shaida, could you please explain? Resilience is described as a key trait of these volunteers. Can you share a story or a personal experience that exemplifies how youth volunteers not only bounce back from setbacks, but also collaborate with various organizations to amplify the impact of their initiatives?
Okay, I think I will share my own personal story, my personal experience when I newly joined as a volunteer. So I am a part of YSS, the Student Volunteers Foundation. I remember my first mission with YSS, which was in Laos in 2018. I think Mira is my batch also. We were together,
Yes.
but in different villages. I'm in Ban Giang Nom. So I was really a newbie, I would say so. So I definitely learned about resilience during that part of my life. So our mission was to improve the educational opportunities for the children in that community. And the road was definitely not smooth. So the challenge, one of the many challenges that I faced was language and cultural barriers. So upon arrival, we encountered a significant language barrier because we are speaking English and Malay, but they don't know English. They were speaking Lao. So that actually impeded effective communication with the local children and also the community. So our initial teaching methods did not exactly resonate. And so some of the volunteers were feeling quite frustrated. So it was clear that we needed the local insights and expertise to navigate this obstacle. But thankfully, as Masmira mentioned just now, YSS have their counterparts with the local community. So we were university students in Malaysia. We were partnered with the local university students there who can actually converse some English, can understand some English. So they actually helped us navigate the volunteering session at that time. So we collaborated with them, we partnered with them, and so they provided invaluable advice and also especially on effective teaching techniques and help us bridge the cultural gap. And I really especially love the cultural engagement. I love participate in their ceremonies and their food, which was I think the highlight of my journey there. So and also they help us to understand the unique needs of the students. So I feel this collaboration between us Malaysian volunteers and also our Laos counterpart is actually really instrumental in modifying our approach to volunteering, to teaching, and making it more culturally relevant and impactful. So I think that's where I learned how to bounce back, where I gained my resilience. That's like the dot, the starting point. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Shaila. Yes, when I think back about the volunteerism days, it definitely brings back a lot of memories, a lot of tears, because when we grew apart from our counterparts, the community, it really impacts us. When we come back to our country, we'll think back about the journey that we had. Um, so I do of course, besides then the question, maybe Kelsey, would you like to add on more stories first to learn about your engagement? Because it is definitely interesting to know more about how was your volunteering days in Ecuador. Maybe about that a little bit, the sharing session.
Yeah, just for clarity, you want to know more about my personal experience in country versus virtual?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just to give our audience a little insight of how your volunteering actually, helps the other community so we can understand more about the work that you do.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was an in-person volunteer, I loved all the quiet time to just spend and absorb the culture and, like you guys mentioned, experience the food and all the things that make that country and that culture extra special. And while we can't 100% translate that to the virtual experience, I found that equally meaningful just because at the time when I was a virtual service participant, I had a full-time job. I have a large dog, so I can't travel abroad. She's my, baby. So I have a lot of personal stuff that, prevent me from going abroad again at this current stage in my life. But I was struggling to find the same fulfillment that I got in my in-person service. So when I started participating, I quickly started looking forward to my time online with my counterpart, more so than my full-time job at the time. And we got to still experience each other's cultures. He was in South Africa, so I was familiar with the culture a bit more. But sending WhatsApp photos of me on a dog walk or, how my family celebrates Halloween, carving pumpkins. And then he would share, pictures of, his home and his family, like that it still had that personal element. So while I can't sit down next to him and share a meal, I can still share it virtually. And so I think they're meaningful in different ways. So next up is response, that's next on my list to do, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Maybe Vanessa, would you like to add on a few insights?
Yeah, that made me think about some participants that I've spoken to, virtual participants, talking about how, they thought they were showing up to teach an English class, for example, but they really learned about their counterpart so much that the counterpart started inviting them to events and would just bring their laptop or a phone or something. And so they attended funerals, they attended baby showers, all virtually, because they really became a part of their lives and they wanted to share their lives outside of, the work collaboration. And it's been really fascinating because, right now we only focus on, or the only people that are eligible to be our participants in the virtual program are people that have done Peace Corps in person before. We call them returned Peace Corps volunteers. So what that means is you have somebody who maybe was a volunteer in Ecuador in the 60s. Now they're re-engaging with Ecuador present day, but doing it through technology. And they're saying, wow, I have all these technical skills, but I don't know technology at all. So I had to learn a new skill to be able to engage with my counterpart. But once I was in that space, it was like I was back in Ecuador because, it was so familiar, the culture, the language, all the things that I miss about being in person with a counterpart were there. And the fun news that we wanted to also share on the call today is that we have been given approval to open up eligibility to not just those who have done in-person volunteer service in the past, but any U.S. citizen who is qualified. In other words, our partners say they want somebody with this particular degree and this kind of experience. If someone is qualified, U.S. citizens can be virtual service pilot participants in the future. And so if there are other U.S. citizens that are listening to this podcast today, we're happy to share the link to those opportunities in the show notes. At the time, for the time being, we're just it's just going to be U.S. citizens engaging with our local communities, but who knows, in the future, maybe we'll be able to do some side-by-side service in the virtual space.
That is great. I wish I have the chance to be in collaboration with his card maybe in the future. Okay, so maybe we can wrap up. All right, we had a really fun interview today. What an insightful conversation with all of these three authors. Beautiful ladies, thank you so much for your time. But before we leave this call or conversations, maybe we start from Shaida. Shaida, do you have anything else to tell our audience, maybe about your blog post or anything that is meaningful?
So I mentioned in my blog post that more about youth volunteers, how we are, because I'm also a youth, how we are the leaders of tomorrow, and how we can change the future. Actually, everybody has the role to play in changing our world, not just a specific age group, not just the youth. I feel like the responsibility falls upon every human being that lives on this planet Earth. We are all responsible to monitor our, we are experiencing like very, climate change and everything. I think it's really important that everybody actually takes part in this and actually cares about this and really spread awareness. All of us have Instagram, Facebook. We can, you can just click share. It takes 1 second. I think, I want to share that everybody should really care about what's going on our planet. Yeah, that's all.
Yes, definitely, because we are the future of this earth. So we have to really take great care of where we are heading towards. And maybe Kelsey, would you like to add on last notes of the blog post?
Yeah, I guess my only addition, very similar, is that, you think of volunteer service as like, I'm not getting paid, but what you get out of the experience is like, it changes your life. You get so much out of the experience, and you get to contribute to the world in whatever way that you find most meaningful. So whether that's in person, virtual, however it transpires, it's something you carry with the rest of your life. So I encourage everyone to find a volunteer opportunity in their local community and get involved.
Definitely. And also maybe Vanessa, would you like to say something to our audience?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say, youth, we should not underestimate the power of the youth. We have to evolve, otherwise we go the way of the dinosaur. And I think that's what youth really contribute to every space that they enter. They have a fresh perspective. They have the energy and the motivation to move things along. And so our responsibility as organizations is to adapt and to learn and to capitalize on the strengths that the new generation is bringing. So it's exciting to see how things are going to continue to evolve.
Yes, definitely. I can't wait to see what the future holds for all the volunteers around the world. And thank you so much to Shaida Sawi, Kelsey McMahon, and also Vanessa Dupuis for this very insightful and also really beautiful conversation about volunteering. And definitely I had some memories coming up from my volunteering experience through this conversation. To our viewers and listeners, don't forget to explore explore the conference website at www.ivco2023.org to read the blog post and more information. Definitely don't miss out the blog posts because they are amazing. And if you haven't registered yet, this is your time to grab this opportunity to be part of IVCO 2023 Kuala Lumpur. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye.